Hi, welcome to this special edition of 10 by 6 and welcome particularly my colleague Jason, but also our two guests, Giovanna Lewis and Laura Baldwin. Giovanna, or Gio as she is often known, is known to some of our viewers, having previously been on the show, and is a Portland town councillor for the Labour Party and local activist on a number of issues, including climate-related issues. Laura wears all sorts of hats and has done all sorts of extraordinary things. So perhaps it would be better for Laura to introduce herself a little bit. So Laura, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Well, I guess the link with Giovanna is being on the Portland Town Council Climate Action Working Group. I'm on the Green Party Executive Campaigns Committee. I'm a former Olympic sailor and coach. I'm a mother and fairly full-time with doing all kinds of climate activism, and then also the communities, like get the projects done, like planting the trees, community food gardens, clothes swaps, all that kind of thing.
Amazing, fabulous. And we're joined by a dog somewhere I can hear as well.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry, that's fun. Great, well thanks. I mean, we invited you on to talk about a real pressing issue about which Dorset Council is imminently making a decision, and that's the proposal to have a waste incinerator sited on the island of Portland, to which there's been considerable opposition, and you've been a part of that. So we'll come to, there was a significant, massive protest against the incinerator last week, and we'll come to that a bit later. But first of all, I wanted to ask you both to share your thoughts about why the incinerator is not a good solution to the issue of waste. Why? What are the objections to it?
Do you want to go first, Laura?
I don't mind.
Yeah, you go first and then I'll come in after.
Okay, I don't want to steal all the points from you though.
It's fine.
There are lots of points though as to why this isn't a good idea here. I don't know if Gio, you want to specify on why it's not good here, and I can specify more on why it's not good generally.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, do you want to do your general stuff first then?
Okay, well, I can do. So through this, I knew nothing about incineration really, apart from it burns rubbish to create energy. I didn't even know that, I don't think, when this proposal first came about. So I've had to learn an awful lot over the last 2 years, and really researched and been very grateful also for those locals that have researched pretty much as though it was a full-time thesis that they were studying, because they were that passionate about it. Lucy Grieve, Dorset Deb, Paula, I'm not sure how to pronounce her surname.
Yeah, Klensky, I think, yeah.
Phenomenal people that put so much time and effort in. And I got linked to a national campaign called Stop the Burn that's backed by Greenpeace, by XR Zero Waste, and UK Without Incineration. And through that, I've learned that, you know, basically 90% of what we burn in incinerators needn't be. That it, you know, a large proportion of it can be avoided, and we can recycle, reuse, and compost. So the need to burn our waste really isn't going to exist for very much longer. Because of the climate-related issues, we are going to have to shift to a circular economy where we take natural products, we make them into something, we use them, and then we reuse them or recycle them, and the materials stay in a cycle. They don't get shifted off to become waste. And Dorset Council actually has that as its aim, is to adopt the circular economy. Dorset Waste Partnership, Dorset Council also have this plan, this aim that by 2040 they themselves will be zero waste. So the transition is going to happen, right? We're not going to need these incinerators, thankfully, for very much longer. We are going to be able to phase them out. That basically of the 50 plus incinerators currently burning in the country, the carbon dioxide emissions are more than Manchester and Birmingham combined. So, wow. You know, we're sold that incinerators are this great green idea. Yeah, they're this, like, you know, renewable energy, low carbon technology. It's absolute rubbish. The only thing green about them is the word green in their marketing. You know, they're claiming to be carbon neutral, and they're pumping out 577 tons a day of carbon dioxide, 1 ton of carbon dioxide, you need 1 broadleaf tree to live for 100 years to offset the 1 ton of emissions. That's 577 trees, each having to live for 100 years to offset 1 day's worth of emissions from this waste incinerator. So you times that by the 202,000 tons that this thing's going to emit a year, and you just go, that's absolutely bonkers. Like, you can't offset that. They're not looking at installing carbon capture technology. They've said that it could be put in the future, but it's not in their bid. I'll stick to the why incinerators are bad and not go down the route of this particular one. So incinerators compete with recycling rates. So council areas that have higher rates of incineration have lower rates of recycling. Like, that's fact, you can see it on a graph. There are plenty of alternatives to incineration, so you can recycle, reuse, reduce the waste in the first place, and all of those are much better for the environment. I've learned that incinerators are 4 times more carbon intensive than grid energy and 23 times more carbon intensive than wind and solar. So we're really not looking at a good renewable option here. And as Paula brought to the table, the 15 megawatts that this plant is going to produce could be produced by 1 wind turbine. You know, it's not about the energy production. This is about the tax incentives that you're paid to get rid of the waste. Like, it's a problem and that's the easiest solution, just burn it, get rid of it. But it's a resource. Actually, that's Gio's famous one. It took me a while to grasp, and I'll let Gio explain it, but it's resources, not rubbish. I don't know, Gio, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I was just going to go in on something else first while it's in my mind. I just wanted to, so resource is not rubbish. Everything that we produce is valuable and uses energy, and we should treat it very, very sort of carefully and with honour, because it's valuable. Do you know what I mean? We shouldn't be making single-use things just to throw away when you think about the impact it has on our world. 50% of the plastic used in this country is actually single-use, designed to be used once and thrown away. This is scandalous. As a society, we need to stop that straight away. Sorry, I'm getting a bit general rather than specific. So I'll come back to Portland. So when this monstrosity first landed on our desks, we were told that Dorset had a waste problem that Powerfuel could fix. We were also told that this plant can service and heat 30,000 homes or some ridiculous amount. So that set a lot of people on the island off on thinking this was a great idea. But of course, the literature that they published, Powerfuel, was crafted very carefully. They didn't actually say it could do this or it would do this, but the implication was there. And for a lot of people, they ran away with that. Well, we've since found out that Dorset, our council, does not have a waste problem. They do not need Powerfuel. They've got contracts sewn up really well. And so that was misleading to begin with. And we've also found out that never in a month of Sundays will this ever be able to heat homes on the island, because the infrastructure's not there. Normally, infrastructure for heating homes comes with new incinerators and new homes together, developed together, which we haven't got here. It costs an awful lot of money, and because of the location of the plant and where the nearest houses are, by the time the hot water got to those houses, it would be pretty cool, so it wouldn't work at all. There just isn't the money and the infrastructure. So we start off with a company who kind of misleads us from the beginning. And then we begin to realise that the heating is actually for Portland, the energy is going to be for Portland Port, so that they can continue to bring in the cruise ships and meet sort of future guidelines around emissions, this, that and the other. Okay, so we get to the truth of this. This is a commercial venture for money. One of the things on the march that was noticeably different for me was I noticed the amount of placards and people talking about health and not wealth, and not profit. People seem to be really getting on board with that now in a way that I personally didn't see at the last demonstration. So why is it not good for Portland? Do tell me if I'm going on too long. So I come in with the health. As you know, I campaigned to keep the hospital here before and the beds and all that jazz. So I've got this real thing about health because it's vital for us all. It's the dangerous gases and the particulates that will come out of the chimney stack of this incinerator. Now, there is no commercially available filter that can actually filter everything out. So that's where we start from. So whatever power fuels say, they cannot keep everything out of the air. It's going to, be emitted into the air. So we know that these poisonous things will be coming out, gases and particulates, and it's particularly the fine particulates, the ultrafine particulates, I should say. You can't see them, can't touch them, can't smell them, but you can breathe them in if you're exposed to them, and they go straight into the bloodstream and straight into the heart. If you've got predetermined health conditions or you're young, the risks are all there. Research is variable on that, and it's usually because it's actually difficult to research, but it's growing and more money is being invested in it. Another thing particular to Portland is the fact that incinerators are not commonly, or usually, I don't know of one that's built next to a big hill. Okay, you build a big chimney stack next to a hill, and then what comes out of that is affected, by the direction of it. The wind swirls round. I don't know the technical lingo for that. Some of our great sort of learned people that look into this will know that. Something to do with inversions and I don't know, all that sort of thing. But anyway, so that will affect safe dispersal, the fact that it's sitting next to a hill. And on top of that, as you know, Portland is often, throughout the winter, shrouded in a sort of misty, foggy cloud that sits over Portland for hours on end, sometimes days. Well, when that's happening, there's no dispersal. So all of those nasties will actually be held in at the top of the island. And, who's going to breathe those in? The people that live in the poorest, most deprived part of Portland, particularly, but all of us. So it shouldn't be built here, next to that hill. And I mean, let's not even go to what's going to happen to the people in the prisons as well, who are kind of living on top of that chimney stack. So they're sort of my main reasons. Where are they going to get their waste from? They're already negotiating, they told us, with Guernsey and Ireland to bring in waste. So who knows where else it's going to come from? I mean, I'm surprised they revealed that. I think they had to in the end. So do you remember, Laura?
Can I just say, that would come as a shock to some people that may have heard about this, because they will have heard that it's, or assumed that it's waste from Portland or Weymouth and Portland, or from just Dorset. But that's absolutely not the case. As you said, Dorset already has contracts in place to deal with waste and recycling, and waste will be brought in under these plans from all over the place, even from Ireland. And how will it travel? How will it travel across places such as Dorset? I mean, how will that affect us in terms of how it's transported?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you want to come in there, Laura, about the traffic and 80 lorries a day.
Yeah. Well, at the moment they're saying there'll be 80 lorry movements a day. We've got one road on and off the island that is often congested, and then through Wyke it's passing very close to 3 schools on its way through. But they could bring waste in with ships from anywhere in the world, and then you lose the ability of actually knowing what's in that waste, and it could become a hell of a lot more toxic and even worse on our doorsteps, burning away.
And sorry, on top of that, we've got the expansion of the, do you know the grain and animal feed company down at the port? Company called Glencore, who have slightly changed their name. So it was actually a Weymouth Town Council, independent, that calculated how many extra HGVs would be going in and out of the port due to that expansion. And he came up with 80 lorry journeys as well. So when you add the two together, it's pretty shocking. I must tell you just one other thing as well, if we're talking about waste coming in via ships. Quite early on, we heard from Mr. Frampton, the director. I think he slipped it out by mistake, really. He said it's not commercially viable to bring waste in by ships unless it's over 100 miles away. So, that says it all, really, doesn't it? I remember when he popped that one out, I don't think he realised what he was telling us, because he was still banging the "we're saving Dorset's waste" drum at the time. So, anyway, yeah. So I don't know.
So some of the objections are based on the fact that it's not an incinerator is not an environmentally friendly solution. It will actually potentially contribute to it'll contribute to the problems of climate change, etc., by pumping lots of tons of carbon into the air, and increased traffic, road traffic, trucks, diesel use, etc. Some of the objections are based on health grounds, and some of that is based on some medical and scientific research done on different incinerators and the particulates that they spew out into the air that people, including our children, will be breathing, which can be very harmful. Just to say, I read, I think it was on Dorset Eye, Jason, a first-hand account of somebody who's recently moved to Portland from Swindon, where they lived close to an incinerator. And they deliberately moved away because they were experiencing health-related problems because of living close to an incinerator. And they described it as a regular, disgusting, acrid, toxic smell and taste in the air that they were breathing, and also that they were getting headaches. And when they were working away, they weren't getting headaches. When they came home to close to the incinerator, they were getting regular headaches. So they have deliberately moved to our lovely, clean area of Dorset to avoid living close to an incinerator, only to find there's a plan for one. So there's a first-hand account, albeit anecdotal, of somebody of what it's like to live next to an incinerator. And you know, how on earth could we possibly decide to for our children, apart from anything else, to live close to that? It's staggering. So those are the kind of objections on environmental and health grounds that have been put forward. How have town councils responded prior to the Dorset Council decision?
You know that Portland Town Council voted against it, and then quite soon Weymouth Town Council did as well. But we're just sort of consultees. You know, our role is a bit advisory. We don't actually get to make the decisions, unfortunately. So we're waiting for Dorset Council's strategic planning committee to do that. So that's the one that sits right at the top and does all the big complex things, which we're thinking might be on the 22nd of November. That's their next meeting. But you know, there's every chance that it will be postponed and it won't be ready, because we don't know yet if the council will need to go back to Powerfuel and ask them for more information. But alongside the planning application, we also have the separate application for an operating license through the Environment Agency. I don't know if you remember that. People got quite confused about that. So that was the sort of that was the kind of big thing from Portland Town Council. We were consulted, and the Town Council wanted to make sure that it did that properly and thoroughly and well, and for the sake of everybody that lives in the area that they represent. So the council agreed to spend a big wad of money on getting specialist advice to enable them to give a valid response to that. So we put aside £40,000 to do that, which is big for a small council. But then within a couple of weeks, Weymouth Town Council came in with us and donated, paid up half, basically £20,000. I will say, I'm a Portland Town Councillor, but I can't vote on anything to do with the council and the incinerator because I am predetermined, because I'm out there campaigning against it. So our clerk runs a very tight, robust legal ship and, makes sure that I'm excluded from all of that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's move on in. We've got about 5 minutes left. I was going to say, can we move on to talk about last Saturday's event? Sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, if I can just ask a few questions, sorry. Or just make a few points. In terms of the wind turbine, if it produces the same amount of energy as the incinerator, why is that not something that Dorset, Portland and Weymouth Town Council are really pushing and proposing as an alternative?
Can I answer that one?
Because whoever wants to use that, the port would have to invest money or get grants or money from somewhere. If they wanted a wind turbine, they'd have to figure out a way of paying for it,
or if Dorset Council wanted to, you'd have to get funding for it. Whereas with this proposition that they've got with the incinerator, the port presumably don't have to pay, they're not paying anything. It's power fuel that's going through planning, they're not even going to build it actually. So there's big investment money in incinerators. So the money's coming from elsewhere, it's not coming from the port. So it would suit the port to get the energy from another company that's generating it. There'll be money coming in because they're for the operators, because they're disposing of waste. They might be selling that energy to Portland Port cheap, I don't know. Portland Port might even be renting the land to the incinerator people and getting money that way. I'm not really sure of the details. Sorry, does that make it clear? Basically, it's the cheaper option for the port.
Thank you. It makes sense, but I guess I would argue, one, we need to find out what the cost is for installing a wind turbine, and then maybe we could have considered the £40,000 that you have for the investigation could have been spent probably helping to put that in place. But I'm just talking about, the way in which money moves around and is offset.
Yeah. Can I just come back on that? The wind turbine will cost a sixth of what the incinerator will cost, which I believe is about £100 million. The incinerator, I think that's the right amount that Paula quoted. And a wind turbine, she said, would cost a sixth of that.
Right.
It's a lot cheaper, but it's about where the money is coming from. And I see what you mean about the £40,000, but we had 6 weeks, or was it 4 weeks or 6 weeks, to actually say, you've got to respond to this and we want your response.
So no, I understand that entirely. Yeah. And now that you've told me that it's about 15 to 17 million for the installation, £40,000 wouldn't make an awful lot of difference.
That's got to be the price to build one out at sea, I would think, because on land, I was told it was 2 million for a wind turbine. But Portland needed 4 to power the whole of the island, would need 4 wind type turbines, and that would cost 8 million, was low carbon Dorset's quote to me.
Right, thank you. That's made that clearer. Thank you. Another question: what can people still do to stop this incinerator?
Well, we're hoping to put together a sort of writing to the particular councillors, bit of a campaign. But I think writing to your councillors, I'm hoping that, well, we're going to send out contact details of all the strategic planning authority councillors, right to them. I think writing to Mr. Drax is a good idea. He's actually said that he's against the incinerator, but he's kind of said it in a letter and we've not heard any more. So it's not really a very strong against, I believe. Up north, there was a Tory MP whose constituency was having an incinerator. He was against it. He actually paid himself for the legal advice to oppose it, which would have cost him, a couple of, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000. To me, that's really being against something.
Probably just moved money from his moat.
And also on the 22nd of November, if Dorset Council Strategic Planning Committee do meet on that date at 10 a.m, we want to be there with as many people as possible as they all arrive for that meeting to really show the strength of opposition on the day. It's going to be difficult because it's at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning, but anybody that can make that, we would really advise or invite you along.
Can I make a suggestion as well in terms of the next point, in terms of outlining a clear litigation process if the incinerator does go ahead for those people whose health is affected, and making that point very clear before any decision is made, that litigation and the measurement of the effect of it will start from the day in which it is installed. Because the last thing they really want is a massive headache from day one, with people then solicitors' letters and everything like that, because they'll spend all that money and then maybe have it shut down.
That's a good idea, isn't it? Yeah, we have to look at that one.
I'm hoping though that really Wales has put a ban on new waste incinerators. Scotland's looking to do the same. There's a big pressure on the UK to do the same. They're at COP next month in a few weeks' time discussing how are we going to keep below 1.5 degrees. We've heard from the scientists that in order to do that, the UK actually needs to reduce its carbon emissions by 15% every year. We only have carbon budget left at current rates of emissions for 2 to 4 years. Like, our budget to stay within 1.5 degrees will be gone within that period of time. So this, like, 2050 net zero, 2035 is just cloud cuckoo land. And this is coming direct from Professor Kevin Anderson. Caroline Lucas has been saying it very bluntly as well. We are out of time. We need drastic, radical action in order to keep below that budget, and that's not going to include burning our waste.
There is a slight problem though, Laura, unfortunately, in that many nations are putting pressure on the UN now to change their fossil fuel targets because they say that they can't abide by them. So therefore, as we know, especially with climate skeptic power bases, they do tend to push those targets back and back and back. So pretty much everybody who's alive today will probably never see that target reached unless you're very, very young. And that sort of leads me on to the last point, really, is having had the two analysis, the two research data gathered from Weymouth and Portland Council in relation to the effect of the incinerator, etc. Has anybody asked Dorset Council specifically to tell them, or will they ask them, why the lives of Portlanders are deemed not a priority?
No, I don't expect that question's been asked.
Again, it may be worth asking and sticking it on the front of as many media as you can.
Why aren't you? Yeah, that's a good idea. Yes, thank you. One interesting thing about the strategic committee is that there's not one Portland councillor on this committee. So they can't influence anything. It's shocking. They're all sort of in the east mainly, except for 2 in Chickrell. But anyway.
But so, thank you very much for that. Could you now just sort of, as we finish the show, just summarise the event last Saturday for us in terms of how many turned up and the impact, etc.
Go for it, Laura.
Okay, well, it was pretty exciting to see the flocks of people arriving when we started at 10 o'clock on Saturday. It was supposed to be a cloudy day, but the clouds parted, the sun shone on us. It was like the heavens are saying, yes, you know, you're on the right side here. And just people came from everywhere and just crowded around. And we did a visual display up on the hill showing the height of the chimney using eco-friendly, non-toxic smoke flares, which was really impacting, I think, for a lot of people going, wow, okay, that's pretty high and it's right amongst the houses. And then we had 4 inspiring talks. So the crowd was great. There was a lot of energy. There was a lot of cheering. There was a lot of agreements. We learned to chant Code Red for Humanity. Incineration is insanity. Zero waste is the solution. Incineration is pollution. And off we marched down to Portland Port. People had got dressed up. There was fancy dress costumes, really a lot of effort gone into the placards. It was a visual, audio. We had the samba band at the front. And so the vibe was just really uplifting. And we marched to Portland Port. We were very well behaved. We stuck to the pavements. We stopped when cars needed to go by. We had marshals there, making sure that everybody was safe and the traffic was still flowing. We went up to the port entrance, chanted to them, banged on the drums, and then we marched back to the green, where a local had donated his travelling stage and brought some local musicians along, and there was acoustic music on the green for a couple of hours afterwards. It was a very
roughly how many people?
Experience.
Sorry, Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, it was an uplifting experience, and there was double the number that came last year. So last year they said 300 to 400, and there was easily double that. We couldn't get everyone anywhere near the entrance. It was that many people that they were all the way down the end of the road.
I mean, it certainly seemed, and reports are that, you know, it was the best part of 1,000 people were there. And of course, it's worth mentioning this doesn't only affect Portland people. It isn't only Portland people protesting, people from Weymouth and beyond who feel strongly about this and who could be adversely affected health-wise by the incinerator. So, but incredible to see so many people turn out. And whilst it's not Portland councillors voting for it, you know, I hope Dorset as a whole, people in Dorset as a whole, will be saying to councillors, you vote for this sort of thing, we ain't voting for you anymore. You know, if you're going to destroy the climate, you know, and endanger people's health, then, you know, you don't represent us as councillors. There's no chance we're going to vote for you again in the future. I hope the councillors making decisions on it, understand that's the kind of thing people are saying now. And I think from now on, as people grow this greater awareness of the dangers of climate change, I hope people are saying to their politicians at all levels, local and national politicians, saying, unless you make green choices that are good for the planet and people, and not for profit for the few, we ain't going to vote for you. We're going to actively vote you out and get rid of you. So great to see so many people, and well done for organising such a huge, event and show the groundswell show county councillors this groundswell of support against the incinerator and for greener alternatives.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
We need to wrap it up now, folks. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Theo. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Well done, both of you.
As I said, and any support we can give you, obviously continuing on through from now on, just you know where we are. But thank you so much for coming on the show. It's amazing.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Jason. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
And you. Bye bye now.
Bye.
Fantastic. We got 1 minute just to I wanted to make sure we didn't get cut off, otherwise,
Yeah.
I'm going to be up at COP26 if you want to do anything whilst I'm up there.
Yes, please. That'd be amazing. Absolutely do. Yeah. So if you just think about what's convenient for you and what you could do, and let us know, and then we'll fit in.
Okay. Brilliant.
I'll be
perfect.
I'm back on the road Monday, and we've got the Guardian coming into our house.